Talia Sterling woke up because her bedroom was too bright for the middle of the night. A cold, bluish light cut through her half-closed eyelids, a glow that wasn't like the streetlights outside or the reflection of the moon. She cracked her eyes open and turned her head toward the side of the bed where her husband, Devin, usually slept, but she only saw a crumpled pillow and the comforter thrown back. The digital clock on the nightstand read 3:20 in the morning. Talia sat up, feeling the cold air embrace her shoulders, and listened to the silence of their apartment. From the nursery came the peaceful, soft breathing of their 2-year-old daughter, Nova. And from the living room, that same strange light was bleeding through the door, the light that had woken her. Her legs carried her toward the door, and Talia, pulling on a robe over her nightgown, stepped into the hallway. Devin was sitting at the computer desk in the living room, leaning back in his chair. His head was tilted unnaturally to the side, his mouth slightly open, his face fixed with the slack expression only sleeping people wear. The monitor glowed in front of him like a massive, bottomless window into some other world. That light made her husband's face look almost ghostly, drained of its usual warm color. Talia was about to wake him, thinking that sleeping in a chair was uncomfortable and bad for his back, but something made her stop 2 steps away from the desk. The screen displayed his email. It wasn't his work correspondence, filled with the endless technical terms and codes that Talia had long since become used to ignoring, but his regular personal account, flashing with bright lines of unread messages. Talia involuntarily glanced at the subject lines and froze when she saw an email from a woman named Brenda Hayes with the subject, "Regarding your listing inquiry for condo sale." Her heart slammed against her chest so sharply as if an invisible rope tied to her ribs had been yanked from within. Talia moved around the chair, trying not to make a sound, stood behind Devin, and looked at the screen. The email was open. "Good morning, Devin. Thank you for your inquiry. I'm ready to begin working on the sale of your 2-bedroom condo. I suggest we meet this week for an inspection and price discussion. Sincerely, Brenda Hayes, Prime Properties Realtor." Talia's fingers felt numb, but she forced herself to scroll the mouse up to the previous emails in the thread. There were a few. The first was dated a week earlier. "Welcome to Betty's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video." Now let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. "Hello, my name is Devin Sterling. I need to sell my 2-bedroom, 800-square-foot condo in a family-friendly neighborhood. It's in good condition. I'm interested in a quick sale." It felt as if all the air had been squeezed from her lungs. Talia stood, staring at the screen, unable to process the meaning of what she read. Their apartment, the one they had lived in for 5 years, for which they were still paying the mortgage, where Nova was growing up, where every corner was filled with their shared life. Devin wanted to sell it, and he hadn't said a single word to her. Her hands were shaking. Talia opened the sent folder in her husband's email. Scrolling through the messages, she came across a correspondence with his mother, Ms. Vivian Caldwell. Ms. Caldwell didn't use messaging apps, preferring good old-fashioned email, and Devin regularly wrote to her. Talia knew this, but had never read their correspondence, considering it an invasion of privacy. Now, consumed by a feverish determination to get to the truth, she opened the latest letter. "Mom, I wired another $15,000 like you asked. Don't say anything to Talia, she won't understand. I know things are tough right now with the treatments. Hang in there, I promise everything will be okay soon." Talia felt the room swim before her eyes. She opened the previous email. "Mom, I wired $10,000 yesterday. The doctors say they need more tests. Let me know how much you need, I'll find it." Another one. "Mom, sorry it took me so long to send the money. Payroll was delayed. I'm sending $20,000 today. Talia keeps asking why we're saving so little. I don't know what to tell her." There were more and more. The correspondence had been going on for 6 months. Talia scrolled through the letters, and with each new message, a cold, heavy knot grew in her chest, seemingly squeezing out all other feelings. 15,000, 10,000, 20,000, 12,000. The numbers flashed before her eyes, adding up to an impossibly scary total. For the past 6 months, Talia had been baffled as to why they couldn't put aside a single penny, even though Devin earned a good salary. Each time, he told her something about unforeseen expenses, about equipment breaking down at work and needing to buy new parts, or about paying back a loan to a colleague. Talia had believed him. She had always believed him, because in 5 years of marriage, he hadn't given her a single reason to doubt his honesty. Her hands weren't just shaking, they were trembling as Talia opened the documents folder on the desktop. There, among files with incomprehensible names, she found a scanned document. A power of attorney in the name of Vivian Caldwell. The issue date was 3 months ago. The subject of the power of attorney: the right to manage the apartment at their home address, the right to sell, and the right to receive funds. Talia recoiled from the monitor as if it were scalding hot. Her head roared as if she were standing by a waterfall. The noise drowned out all her thoughts. Devin was still sleeping. His breathing was even and calm, and on the desk in front of him lay their entire life, taken apart piece by piece and sold off in parts. She returned to the bedroom, barely remembering the walk, lay down on the bed, and pulled the comforter up to her chin. But the cold didn't go away. It sat somewhere inside her, in the solar plexus, spreading through her body like icy tendrils. Talia closed her eyes, but the lines from the correspondence flashed before her inner sight. The figures. That damned power of attorney. Her thoughts were tangled, crashing into each other like waves during a storm. Miss Caldwell is sick. Devin is wiring her money for treatment. But why is he hiding it? Why is he asking his mother to keep quiet? And most importantly, why sell the apartment? Why sign a power of attorney over to his mother? Talia rolled onto her side, pulled her knees to her chest, and hugged herself, trying to stop the shivering. She remembered their last visit to her mother-in-law 2 weeks ago. Miss Caldwell had greeted them, as always, with a strained smile that never reached her eyes. She had looked at Talia with that assessing gaze that always made her feel out of place. Then she took Nova into her arms and carried her to the kitchen to feed her pie. Talia hadn't noticed any signs of illness then. Her mother-in-law looked as she usually did, trim, neatly dressed, with a perfect hairstyle and her eternal strand of pearls around her neck. She moved easily, without the slightest weakness or fatigue, and her voice sounded spirited, even a little sharp when she scolded Devin for not calling often enough. Maybe the illness had just started? Maybe Ms. Caldwell was hiding it from everyone, not wanting to show weakness? Talia knew that her mother-in-law was the kind of woman for whom any sign of infirmity seemed like a personal defeat. But why hadn't Devin told his wife? Did he distrust her that much? Or did he think she wouldn't understand, as he had written in the email? Talia rolled onto her back and stared at the dark ceiling. Outside the window, dawn was breaking. A strip of gray light landed on the windowsill, and in that light, the contours of the familiar room emerged. The closet where their shared clothes hung, the dresser with family photos on top, the armchair in the corner where Devin liked to read before bed. All of it suddenly seemed fake, like a backdrop for a play being performed in front of her, and she still didn't understand her role. In the nursery, Nova stirred and let out a quiet whimper. Talia automatically got up, put on her robe, and went to her daughter. The toddler was sitting in her crib, blinking confusedly with sleep-filled eyes. Talia picked her up, held her close, and felt the warm child's body calm her inner tremor a little. "Mama?" Nova mumbled, burying her nose in Talia's shoulder. "Shh, sweetie, shh. Everything is fine," Talia whispered, rocking her daughter and listening to the sounds of the apartment. Something creaked in the living room. Devin must have woken up and gotten out of the chair. Talia heard his footsteps, the sound of the bathroom door closing, the running water. Then he walked into the kitchen. The dishes clinked. A normal morning, completely normal, as if there had been no discovery, no terrible truth in the night. Talia put Nova back down, stroked her head, and returned to the bedroom. Devin was already standing by the closet, choosing a shirt. He turned at the sound of her steps and smiled that familiar, warm smile she loved so much. "Good morning. You're up early," he said, and his voice sounded so natural, so calm, that for a moment Talia doubted what she had seen. Maybe I dreamt it all? Nova was crying, Talia answered, trying to make her voice sound normal too. And why are you up so early? Meeting at 9 o'clock. Gotta hustle. Devin pulled on his shirt and started buttoning it. Want coffee? I'll make it myself. Talia walked past him to the dresser and pulled out her clothes. They moved through their morning routine like a long rehearsed dance. Devin made coffee in the kitchen. Talia got dressed and pulled her hair into a ponytail. Nova had fallen back asleep in her crib. Outside the window, an ordinary weekday was beginning. In the next apartment, the radio was playing. Somewhere below, a front door slammed. Talia went into the kitchen and sat across the table from Devin. He was scrolling through something on his phone, sipping coffee. His face was focused but not strained. The ordinary face of a man thinking about his upcoming workday. Talia looked at him and felt an invisible wall rising between them, transparent but impenetrable. Sleep well? Devin asked, without lifting his eyes from his phone. Normal, Talia lied. Were you up late working? Work, he replied curtly. Project's due. I have to finish it by the end of the week. It was so easy for him to lie. He didn't even look up, didn't stumble, didn't flush. Talia looked at his hands, the long fingers she knew so well, which he used to stroke her hair, hold Nova, and type those very emails to his mother. Those hands suddenly felt foreign. Listen, she said, trying to sound casual. How is your mother? I haven't called her in a while. Devin finally tore his gaze from the phone and looked at her. Something flashed in his eyes that Talia couldn't quite place. Was it wariness? Fear? Irritation? She seems fine, he said after a brief pause. I stopped by the other day. Everything's okay. Maybe I should go see her? I miss her, Talia continued, and this too was a lie. Missing Ms. Caldwell was impossible, but now Talia needed to see her mother-in-law with her own eyes to confirm that she was genuinely sick, that all that money was going to treatment, and not something else. Go ahead. She'd be happy to see you. Devin finished his coffee and stood up. Just call ahead to make sure she's home. He walked over to her, leaned down, and kissed the top of her head. The usual goodbye kiss, repeated every morning. Talia felt the familiar scent of his cologne, the warmth of his lips, and something inside her clenched in pain. This man, whom she loved, to whom she had trusted her whole self, was capable of such a lie. See you tonight, Devin said, grabbed his briefcase, and left the kitchen. Talia heard him put on his shoes in the entryway, the front door opening and closing, his footsteps receding down the stairs. She sat motionless, staring into her cup of cold coffee, and felt a void growing inside. When the sounds behind the door finally ceased, Talia got up and went to the living room. The computer was off. Devin always turned it off before leaving. Correct? Neat? Responsible. She turned on the monitor, entered the password, the date of their wedding, which he never changed, and opened his email again. Everything was there. The correspondence with the realtor, the letters to his mother, the power of attorney. Talia took out her phone camera and methodically began taking pictures of the screen. Every email, every number, every date. Her hands no longer shook. They were replaced by a cold composure, an almost mechanical precision of movement. When she finished, she returned to the kitchen and dialed Ms. Caldwell's number. The phone rang for an endlessly long time, and Talia was about to hang up when she heard the familiar voice. Hello, Talia. The voice was cheerful, even slightly impatient. No weakness, no sickly rasp. Hello, Ms. Caldwell. I was hoping to stop by today, if I'm not interrupting. With Nova. Oh, of course, come over. I'll be home after lunch. I just have to run to the doctor for a bit, but otherwise the day is free. To the doctor, so it's true she's sick. Or is this also part of the act? Okay, I'll aim for around 11 o'clock. Talia said and added, trying to sound light-hearted. How are you feeling? Oh, the usual for people our age, her mother-in-law replied with a kind of forced cheerfulness. One thing aches, then another, but it's nothing. We hold on. They said goodbye, and Talia hung up the phone. She stood in the middle of the kitchen in her old house clothes, barefoot on the cold linoleum, and looked out the window at the gray morning sky. Somewhere out there, in this city, Devin was living and working, sitting in a meeting and thinking about his projects. Somewhere else, in her spacious condo, Ms. Caldwell was sitting, getting ready for her daughter-in-law's visit, not suspecting that Talia already knew the truth. And here, in this small kitchen with the chipped faucet and old refrigerator, stood Talia, realizing that her life had just split into a before and an after. Before this night, she was a happy wife and mother who believed in her husband's honesty. Afterward, she was a woman who didn't know what to do with the truth she had uncovered. Nova's cry came from the nursery. Talia shook herself, wiping away the unbidden tears, and went to her daughter. Life went on, no matter what. She needed to dress the child, feed her, and then go see her mother-in-law and look her in the eye, knowing what she knew. "I'm coming, sweetie. I'm coming," Talia said, entering the nursery. Nova was standing in her crib, holding onto the railing and reaching out her arms. Her face was wet with tears, her hair disheveled. Talia picked up her daughter, held her close, and inhaled the scent of her child's skin, sweet, warm, and familiar. Whatever happened between the adults, Nova must not suffer. That was the only thing Talia was absolutely sure of. The day dragged on slowly, as if time had thickened and turned into a viscous substance that she had to wade through with effort. Talia fed Nova cereal, got her ready for a walk, and dressed herself. The automatic movements she had performed 1,000 times now required a special exertion of will. Pulling tights onto a wiggling child, zipping up a jacket, tying a hat. Each action seemed incredibly difficult. A mirror hung in the hallway, and Talia caught her reflection. An ordinary face, maybe a little paler than usual, but overall, nothing out of the ordinary. No one looking at her would guess that everything inside her had been turned upside down, that every thought caused pain, and that her heart was beating erratically, as if it had forgotten its rhythm. She remembered standing in front of this same mirror 5 years ago in her wedding dress, and Devin looking at her as if she were the most beautiful woman in the world. Ms. Caldwell had been at the wedding too, sitting in the front row with a stone face and not clapping when the newlyweds kissed. Talia had attributed it then to the emotion of a mother giving away her only son. Now she understood. Her mother-in-law simply hadn't accepted her, never had, and never planned to. By 10:30, they were ready. Talia settled Nova in the stroller, grabbed her bag, and left the apartment. The elevator, as usual, wasn't working, and she had to haul the stroller down the stairs. The steps were worn, the railings chipped. The landing smelled of strangers cooking and tobacco smoke. An ordinary, dated, mid-rise apartment building where ordinary people with ordinary problems lived. The bus ride was long, twisting through the clogged morning streets. Nova looked out the window, pointing at cars and dogs. Talia sat next to her, thinking about what she would say to her mother-in-law. Should she ask directly? But then Ms. Caldwell would warn Devin, and he would have time to invent some story. Or should she pretend she knew nothing and just observe? Her mother-in-law's condo was in a different neighborhood, in a brick-and-mortar complex built in the 70s that looked much more solid than the apartment building where Talia and her family lived. Miss Caldwell opened the door almost immediately after the bell rang. She was wearing a noble gray house dress. Her hair was neatly styled, and she had on subtle lipstick. Come in," she said, stepping aside. "My little Nova, come to Grandma." Nova reached out her arms, and Miss Caldwell scooped up her granddaughter, holding her close. Talia watched the scene and felt everything inside her tighten into a hard knot. Her mother-in-law loved her granddaughter so much, yet she was capable of destroying the family the child was growing up in. They walked into the kitchen. It smelled of fresh baking. A new coffee maker sat on the counter, which Talia noticed immediately. Miss Caldwell took a pie out of the oven, cut it into pieces, and placed one in front of Talia. Eat, don't be shy. You've gotten so thin," she said, settling Nova into a high chair. Talia picked up a fork and took a bite of the pie. It was delicious, but it was hard to swallow. Her throat was constricted by the rising tears. She forced herself to smile. "Thank you. It's very good," Talia said, and paused. You mentioned you were going to the doctor today. Is everything okay? Ms. Caldwell waved a hand dismissively. Oh, it's nothing. Just need to get some blood work done. They check everything all the time at our age. She spoke lightly, carelessly, but Talia noticed how her cheekbones tightened for a moment, how the corner of her lip twitched. What exactly are they worried about? Talia asked cautiously. Oh, nothing much. My heart sometimes has a little flutter. My blood pressure spikes. Age, you know. Ms. Caldwell turned to the stove, turning on the kettle. Talia looked at her straight back, her confident movements, the ease with which she lifted the heavy kettle, and saw no sign of illness. A woman in the prime of her life, trim and energetic. Was she really sick? Or was this all an act for her son? The rest of the visit was agonizing. Ms. Caldwell talked about her neighbors, her old job, and some TV shows. Occasionally, she inserted barbs disguised as concern. Devin looks completely worn out. He's probably working too hard to support you all. Or, Nova should be getting more attention, not just sitting with a phone. Talia nodded silently, drank her tea, and thought about going to the clinic her mother-in-law had named tomorrow. She would find out if Miss Caldwell was truly getting treatment there. And then would come the conversation with Devin. The conversation she dreaded more than anything. Nova played with toys on the living room rug in Ms. Caldwell's condo, and Talia sat on the sofa, examining the room, trying to spot things she hadn't noticed before. The large TV on the wall was clearly new, with a huge screen, the kind advertised in expensive electronics stores. The coffee table wasn't the same one from 6 months ago either. This one looked modern, with a glass top and chrome legs. Orchids stood on the windowsill in expensive ceramic pots. But Ms. Caldwell always used to say that flowers were a waste of money. You haven't finished your tea yet. Her mother-in-law's voice came from the kitchen, where she was clanking dishes. Talia startled, pulling herself out of her thoughts. I'll finish it now, she replied, getting up from the sofa and heading back to the kitchen. Ms. Caldwell was standing at the sink with her back to her. There was a peculiar straightness to her back, almost a military bearing. No slump, no sign of age-related fatigue. The woman who had just complained about her heart and blood pressure was washing dishes with energetic movements as if she were not 58 years old, but 20 years younger. Ms. Caldwell, Talia began, trying to speak gently, who is your doctor? Maybe I should schedule an appointment with them too? You look so good, so they must be a good doctor. Her mother-in-law turned around, and something fleeting, was it irritation or wariness, flashed across her face. But it immediately smoothed out into her usual polite half-smile. Just a regular primary care doctor at the local clinic. Nothing special. I just go for regular checkups. She dried her hands with a towel and hung it on the hook with deliberate meticulousness. What exactly are you checking? Talia continued. Maybe I should get some tests done too. I haven't really been checked since I gave birth. She sensed the tension in the kitchen rising, becoming almost palpable. Oh, just a general blood panel, an EKG. We have to watch our health at our age. Miss Caldwell opened the cupboard, took out a container of cookies, and put it on the table. Here, have one, Nova. She has a sweet tooth. The conversation was over. Her mother-in-law had deftly changed the subject, and Talia realized that insisting now was useless. She took a cookie and went into the living room to her daughter, but on the way, she caught sight of a stack of papers on the windowsill. A receipt lay on top. Talia stopped, pretending to adjust the hair tie on her ponytail, and managed to read a few lines. The Sierra Vista Retreat, 21-day package, cost. The figure that followed made her gasp, $15,000. Talia, why are you standing there like a statue? Miss Caldwell's voice sounded right next to her ear, and Talia jumped. Oh, nothing. I was just spacing out. She quickly walked into the living room, her heart pounding somewhere in her throat. A retreat, $15,000. And in the emails, Devin wrote about treatment, about tests, about how hard things were for his mother. So, this hardship was treated with resort packages. Talia sat next to Nova on the rug and mechanically handed her a cookie, but her mind was completely elsewhere. The money Devin was wiring to his mother wasn't going to medicine and doctors. It was going to resorts, new furniture, electronics, and orchids in expensive pots. "Nova, go to Grandma. I'll put on a cartoon for you." Ms. Caldwell walked to the TV and picked up the remote. Bright images flashed across the huge screen, cheerful music played, and Nova stared, mesmerized. Her mother-in-law sat in the armchair opposite Talia and looked at her with that assessing gaze that always made her feel uncomfortable. "You look a little pale today. Are you getting enough sleep?" she asked, with no warmth in her voice, only cold curiosity. "I'm sleeping fine," Talia replied, trying to keep her face calm. "Well, it looks like you're not taking care of yourself. You stay home. You don't get enough fresh air. A woman needs to look after herself, or her husband will stop looking." Ms. Caldwell delivered this as if it were sage advice, but Talia heard the sting in every word. "I try to take care of myself," Talia said quietly, clenching her hands into fists. "Try harder. Devin is handsome, smart, and earns good money. You have to take care of men like that, appreciate them, or others will come along who will." Her mother-in-law spoke casually, flipping through a magazine, but every word hit its mark. Talia remained silent, because if she opened her mouth, she wouldn't be able to hold back the words that were desperate to burst out. She wanted to yell that Miss Caldwell was destroying their family, that she was draining their money, that she was manipulating her son. But instead, Talia simply stood up and said, trying to keep her voice from shaking, "We need to go. Nova needs to nap now." "Well, suit yourself." Miss Caldwell also stood up, and an expression close to satisfaction flashed across her face. "Come back again soon. I'm always happy to see my granddaughter." The trip home was a blur. Talia sat on the bus, holding the sleeping Nova close, and looked out the window at the houses, cars, and people floating by. An ordinary urban landscape, gray and familiar, but today it seemed unreal, a backdrop hiding a completely different reality. A reality where her husband was betraying and lying to her, where her mother-in-law was playing the part of a sick woman, siphoning the last of their money. They got home around 6 o'clock in the evening. Talia tucked Nova into her crib, covered her with a blanket, and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Her hands moved automatically, taking chicken out of the refrigerator, peeling potatoes, putting a pot on the stove. Ordinary actions she had done 1,000 times, but today every movement was difficult, as if she were moving underwater. At 6:30, a key turned in the lock, and Talia heard Devin entering the entryway. Her heart hammered faster. Her mouth was dry. She turned toward the door, gripping the vegetable peeling knife in her hand. "Hey." Devin walked into the kitchen, taking off his blazer. He looked tired. Shadows lay on his face, dark circles under his eyes. "How was your day?" "Normal. I visited your mother." Talia put down the knife and wiped her hands on a towel. "Oh? How is she?" He sat down at the table and rubbed his face with his palms. "She looks great, energetic, spirited. She bought a new TV, changed the furniture. She's even going to a retreat." Talia spoke in an even voice, watching his reaction. Devin froze, his hands still on his face. Then he slowly lowered them and looked at Talia. Something like fright flashed in his eyes. "How do you know about the retreat?" he asked softly. "I saw the receipt. $15,000. Not bad for a sick person, right?" Talia crossed her arms over her chest, feeling the anger she had suppressed all day begin to boil inside her. "Talia, it's not what you think." Devin stood up and took a step toward her. "What do I think, Devin? That you've been wiring huge amounts of money to your mother for 6 months, hiding it from me? That you signed a power of attorney over to her for our apartment? That you want to sell our home without even telling me?" Talia's voice got louder with every word, and she couldn't stop herself. "You read my email?" It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact, and something like betrayal sounded in Devin's voice. "Yes, I read it. You fell asleep at the computer. Everything was open, and I read it. And you know what? I don't regret it, because otherwise, I would never have learned that my husband doesn't trust me, that he thinks I'm so stupid that he can lead me by the nose for years." Talia felt tears rolling down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. "You don't understand. Mom is really sick. She needs money for treatment." Devin spoke hastily, nervously. "The retreat is part of the treatment. The doctor recommended it." "What doctor? Where's the diagnosis? Show me one medical record, one hospital discharge paper." Talia walked right up to him, looking straight into his eyes. "She doesn't want to upset anyone. She doesn't want to show the documents." Devin looked away. "How convenient," Talia scoffed, and there was no amusement in the sound. "A sick person who needs a fortune for treatment but can't provide a single piece of proof. Devin, do you even believe what you're saying?" "I believe my mother." He finally looked at Simone. The painful devotion that Talia had always seen in him whenever Ms. Caldwell was involved was in his eyes. "But you don't believe your wife. I was at your mother's yesterday. Ms. Caldwell looks completely healthy. What's more, she bought new furniture, electronics, and is going to a $15,000 retreat. Those aren't the expenses of a sick person for treatment," Talia said, distinctly articulating every word. "The retreat is part of the treatment. The doctor recommended it." Devin stubbornly repeated the same line. "What doctor? What's his name? What clinic does he work at?" Talia leaned forward. "I don't remember." Devin ran a hand over his face. "You don't remember? Of course." Talia leaned back in her chair. "Fine, let's try a different approach. Why did you sign a power of attorney for the apartment in your mother's name?" Silence hung in the air. Devin looked at Talia, and in his eyes was something like confusion, like a child caught in a transgression. "It's temporary, just in case we needed a large sum of money quickly," he finally said. "In case of what? You're married? You are both owners of the apartment. Why a third party?" Talia didn't let up. "It makes Mom feel more comfortable. She knows that in an emergency she can help." Devin spoke quieter and quieter. "Or she can sell your apartment without your consent," Talia noted coldly, "which is what she plans to do, judging by the correspondence with the realtor." Devin paled. "How do you know about the realtor?" "I read your email. You left it open." Talia slid another printout toward him. "Here's the correspondence. You want to sell the apartment and move in with your mother, without asking me, without discussing it with your wife? It would be better for everyone. Mom has a big condo. We'd save on the mortgage." Devin spoke quickly, defensive. "Better for whom, Devin? For your mother, who would gain complete control over you. For me, who would have to live under the roof of someone who doesn't respect me. For Nova, who would grow up in an atmosphere of constant tension?" Talia's voice rose, the first time in the entire conversation. "You don't understand." Devin stood up abruptly. "No one understands. Mom sacrificed her whole life for me. She raised me alone, without a father. She worked 3 jobs, went without food, and didn't sleep nights. And now, when she's hurting, I have to help her." "You owe your daughter," Talia said softly, and they all looked at her. "You owe your wife, who bore your child and stays home because you asked her to leave her job. You owe the family you created yourself." "I can't abandon my mother. She's alone. She's hurting." Something like desperation sounded in Devin's voice. "Then let's invite her over right now. Let her bring all the medical records, show the diagnosis, and explain exactly what the money is going toward." Simone reached for her phone. "Give me your mother's number. I'll call." "No!" Devin stepped toward her. "Don't. She won't understand. She'll think you're attacking her." "We want to know the truth. If she's truly sick, we'll help. But we have the right to know where our family's money is going." Talia stood up, still holding Nova. Devin stood in the middle of the room, and the struggle within him was visible on his face. He knew he was backed into a corner, that there was no retreat. Finally, he took out his phone and dialed a number. "Mom, it's me. Please come over now. Yes, it's urgent. No, everything's fine. We just need to talk." He spoke nervously, quickly, and his voice was shaking. Hanging up, he looked at Simone and Talia. "She'll be here in an hour. Happy?" "We'll be happy when we see the truth," Simone replied. That hour dragged on endlessly. Devin sat on the sofa, staring at his phone. Simone worked on her laptop, pretending to be busy. Talia fed Nova, put her down for a nap in the nursery, but her thoughts were focused on one thing. What would her mother-in-law say? Would she be able to lie while looking them all in the eye? Or would she finally admit the truth? Exactly at 7 o'clock in the evening, the doorbell rang. Devon jumped up and went to open it. Talia heard voices in the entryway. Her mother-in-law's worried voice, Devon's calming tone. Then Ms. Caldwell entered the living room. She was dressed elegantly, as always. A light coat, a scarf, a neat hairstyle. But her face was strained. Wariness was readable in her eyes. She instantly knew she hadn't been called over for a casual visit. "What's going on, Devon? You scared me with your call." She sat in the armchair, placing her handbag on her lap. "Miss Caldwell, we want to talk about your health," Simone began, and her mother-in-law shifted her gaze to her. "My health? Is this a medical consult?" Mockery entered her voice. "This is a conversation about the money Devon is wiring to you for treatment. We would like to see the medical documents confirming your diagnosis." Simone spoke evenly, without emotion. Ms. Caldwell's face changed, smoothing out, becoming as impassive as a mask. "You are demanding an accounting from me, for my son's money." She slowly articulated every word. "We are asking you to show documents confirming that this money is actually going towards treatment," Talia intervened. Her mother-in-law looked at her with such contempt that Talia felt a chill. "I'm dying," Ms. Caldwell said softly, and her voice trembled. "I have a serious heart condition. The doctors say I don't have long. I need expensive medication, tests. And my son, my only son, is helping me. And you've set up a courtroom here? Counting my money." She took out a handkerchief and pressed it to her eyes. Devon sat beside her, his fists clenched, looking at his mother with such pain that Talia felt a pang of pity. But Simone remained firm. "Then show us the hospital discharge papers, the cardiologist's report, the prescriptions for the medication. Anything." She held out her hand. "I don't have to show you anything." Ms. Caldwell jumped up from the armchair. "I don't have to report to you." "Mom, calm down." Devon stood up and took her hand. "No, I won't calm down. I am being insulted in my son's house." Her mother-in-law snatched her hand away. "Are you going to allow this? Are you going to let them humiliate your mother?" And then something in Devon snapped. He looked at his mother, then at Talia, then at Simone, and said quietly, very quietly, "Please leave. Both of you. I need to think." "Devon," Talia started. "Leave." He raised his voice, and there was such pain in it that Talia took Simone's hand and pulled her toward the exit. Ms. Caldwell grabbed her handbag and headed for the door, but on the threshold, she turned around. "You'll regret this, Talia. You destroyed my family." She spat out the words and left, slamming the door loudly. Simone and Talia were left standing in the hallway. No sound came from inside the apartment. "Let's go to my place," Simone said quietly. "You can't stay here." But Talia shook her head. "No, this is my home. I'm not leaving. I just want the truth. And tomorrow morning I'm going to the clinic to get it." Simone hugged her sister, kissed the top of her head. "I'm right here. Call me and I'll come back." She left, leaving Talia alone in the dark hallway in front of the closed door of her own apartment, behind which her husband was deciding who he would choose, his wife or his mother. Thursday morning began with the sound of a closing door. Devon had gone to work without even stepping into the bedroom, where Talia had been lying with her eyes open since 6 o'clock in the morning. She heard him walking around the apartment, getting ready, turning on the coffee maker in the kitchen, putting on his shoes in the entryway. Ordinary morning sounds that today felt foreign, as if they came from a parallel reality where everything was still fine. Talia got up and washed her face with cold water, trying to wash away the traces of a sleepless night. The mirror reflected an unfamiliar woman with dull eyes and sunken cheeks. When was the last time she had eaten properly? Yesterday? The day before? Food wouldn't go down. All her thoughts were consumed by one goal: find the truth. Today she would find it, no matter the cost. Nova woke up cranky, crying, and refusing her cereal. Children always sense when their parents are distressed. They absorb anxiety like a sponge absorbs water. Talia rocked her daughter, sang a lullaby, and tried to calm her, though she herself needed comfort more than the child. At 8:30, she called Simone. "Can you watch Nova for a couple of hours? I need to go somewhere." Her voice sounded tired, but firm. "Of course, bring her over." Simone didn't ask questions, and Talia was grateful for that understanding. An hour later, Nova was with Simone, and Talia was sitting on the bus, holding a notepad in her bag with the address of the clinic Ms. Caldwell had once mentioned. The city outside the window looked normal. Gray buildings, bustling people, traffic jams. None of these passers-by knew that Talia was falling apart inside, that every new day brought a new dose of pain. The clinic greeted her with the smell of medicine and lines in the corridors. An old building from the 70s with chipped walls and squeaky floors permeated with the illnesses, hopes, and disappointments of thousands of people. Talia approached the registration desk, where a woman in her 50s with a tired face sat behind thick glass. "Hello, I need information about a patient," Talia began, trying to sound confident. "What kind of information? Are you a relative?" The registrar didn't lift her head from the computer. "Yes, my mother-in-law, Vivian Caldwell. I need to know her diagnosis after all the tests. She asked me to check for her. She can't come in person." Talia gave the name. The woman tapped on the keyboard, and the silence dragged on painfully long, while the necessary information appeared on the screen. "Caldwell, Vivian. Last seen here on March the 14th of last year. She was here for a general checkup. The conclusion? Practically healthy. A minor high cholesterol reading. Recommended monitoring." The registrar read it out dryly, emotionlessly. The world swayed. Talia grabbed the edge of the counter to keep from falling. "So, no serious illnesses were found?" Talia re-asked, even though she already understood everything. "That's correct. Do you need a copy to give her?" "Yes, please." Talia pulled out her ID with trembling hands. While the copy was being prepared, she sat on a hard bench in the corridor, staring at a single spot. So it was all a lie. The whole illness, the whole treatment, all the money. $100,000 didn't go to doctors and medicine. It went to Ms. Caldwell's whims, her comfort, her new, luxurious life at her son's expense. And Devin either knew about it and kept silent, or he was so blind that he couldn't see the obvious. With the document in her hands, Talia left the clinic and sat on a bench near the entrance. She needed to calm down, pull herself together, but a hurricane of emotions, anger, betrayal, disappointment, raged inside her. She took out her phone and was about to call Devin, but the phone rang itself. An unknown number. "Hello?" Talia answered mechanically. "Good afternoon. This is Brenda Hayes, the realtor. We arranged with Devin to show the apartment this evening. Is 7 o'clock convenient for you?" Talia's heart dropped. "A showing for what?" she whispered. "Your 2-bedroom condo. We have buyers ready to look today. Did Devin not inform you?" The realtor's voice sounded uncertain. "No, he didn't inform me. I don't know anything about the sale." Talia spoke slowly, struggling to articulate the words. A pause hung in the air. "I see. I'm sorry, there seems to be some confusion. I'll call Devin back." The realtor quickly said goodbye and hung up. Talia sat on the bench, clutching the phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. A showing. Tonight. That meant the selling process was already underway. Devin wasn't just thinking about it or discussing it with his mother. He had already found buyers, arranged a deal, and all of it behind her back. The next hour passed in a fog. Talia remembered driving downtown, looking for a notary's office, and climbing the stairs of an old building. The notary, an elderly man in glasses, listened to her question about the power of attorney and shook his head. "If the power of attorney is drafted correctly, then yes, your mother-in-law has the right to sell the apartment without your consent. You can, of course, challenge it in court and prove that you didn't give consent, but it will be long and complicated. He spoke calmly, explaining the legal technicalities, but for Talia, every word was a punch. And if I prove that the signature on the power of attorney is forged, then the power of attorney is invalid, but that would require expert analysis. The notary shrugged. Talia went out onto the street and just walked, not paying attention to where she was going. People were around her, cars were driving, music was playing somewhere, but she noticed none of it. Inside, only one question echoed. How could the man she had loved for 5 years, whom she trusted completely, be capable of such betrayal? She got home around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The apartment was met with silence and dust on the shelves. Devin was at work, Nova was with Simone. Talia went into the bedroom, took a suitcase out of the closet, and laid it on the bed. Then she just sat next to it and stared at the wall. A decision had to be made. She had to act. But her body wouldn't obey, as if someone had pulled out all her internal springs, and now it was just a useless shell. Time dragged slowly. Seconds turned into minutes, minutes into hours. At 6:30, Talia heard the key in the lock. Devin was back from work. She stood up, smoothed her skirt, and walked into the hallway. He was taking off his shoes, and when he saw her, something like fear flickered across his face. "The realtor called me," Talia said quietly. Devin froze, holding a shoe in his hand. "The apartment showing was supposed to be at 7 o'clock this evening. Did you forget to tell me?" She spoke so calmly that she herself was surprised by her composure. "I wanted to talk to you." He put down the shoe and straightened up. "When? After the sale? When it would already be too late to change anything?" Talia took the clinic document out of her bag and handed it to him. "Here, your mother is healthy. She hasn't been to the doctor in a year. No serious illnesses. She's been lying all this time, and you've been helping her." Devin took the paper, read it, and sank onto the bench in the entryway. His face was gray, his hands shaking. "I didn't know," he whispered. "You didn't know, or you didn't want to know?" Talia sat down on the floor opposite him, leaning her back against the wall. "Devin, you're a smart man. Did you really not see that your mother was manipulating you?" He was silent for a long time, gripping the paper in his hands. Then he spoke, and his voice was broken, full of pain. "I saw it. Deep down inside, I always knew. But I couldn't. I couldn't say no to her. She spent her whole life telling me that she sacrificed everything for me, that she raised me alone without help, and that I owe her everything. And I feel guilty every time I think about refusing her." "Even if it destroys your own family?" Talia asked quietly. "I thought I could manage both, that I could be a good son and a good husband." Devin lifted his head and looked at her, tears in his eyes. "But I failed. I messed everything up. You lied to me for 6 months." Talia felt her throat constrict with rising tears. "Every day you looked me in the eye and lied. You wired money to your mother while I was scrimping on groceries. You signed a power of attorney while I thought everything was fine between us." "I'm sorry." He tried to take her hand, but Talia pulled away. "Sorry isn't enough, Devin. I need a choice. Either you set boundaries with your mother right now, return our money, cancel the sale of the apartment, and start being honest with me, or I'm leaving." She said it firmly, though she was shaking with fear inside. Devin sat with his head down and remained silent. Seconds stretched out, turning into minutes. And with every second, Talia realized the answer had already been given. "You can't choose," she stated, and stood up. "Then I choose." She walked into the bedroom, opened the suitcase, and began folding clothes. Devin followed her, standing in the doorway. "Don't leave, please. I need time to think." There was a plea in his voice. "You had 6 months to think. You chose the lie." Talia folded her own and Nova's clothes, trying not to look at him, because if she did, she would break down and cry. "Talia, I love you." He stepped closer. "Love isn't just words, it's actions. trust, honesty. We don't have any of that anymore. She closed the suitcase and turned to him. I'll call you tomorrow. Maybe you'll make a decision by then, but I can't live in this uncertainty anymore. She grabbed the suitcase, her bag, and her phone. Devin stood motionless, watching her as if he couldn't believe this was really happening. At the door, Talia turned back. You know what's the worst part? Not that you lied, but that I no longer know who you are. The man I loved would never have put me in this position. She opened the door and walked out without looking back. In the taxi on the way to Simone's place, Talia finally cried, silently so the driver wouldn't notice, wiping tears with her sleeve. Outside the window, the lights of the city drifted by, and somewhere out there, in one of those apartments, Devin was left alone. And here, in this taxi, Talia was riding with a broken heart and a suitcase of belongings, starting a new life where there was no place for lies. The week at Simone's apartment crawled by like thick honey, the days blurred together, waking up on a stranger's sofa, breakfasts for 3 in the cramped kitchen, evenings when Nova fell asleep, and Talia lay in the dark, listening to the sounds of someone else's home. Simone tried not to interfere, leaving for work early and returning late, but her presence was felt in everything, in the neatly folded towels, the groceries she bought, and the quiet support that required no words. Devin called every day. For the first 3 days, Talia didn't pick up. She just watched his name light up on the screen and felt something inside her tighten with pain. Then she started answering briefly, monosyllabically. Yes, Nova is fine. No, I'm not ready to talk yet. Yes, I'll think about it. His voice on the phone sounded broken, tired, but Talia forced herself to be firm, not to give in to pity. On the 5th day, a message came. I'm sorry. I ruined everything. I don't know how to fix it. Talia read it 10 times, trying to figure out if the words were sincere or another attempt at manipulation. But she couldn't reply because she didn't know what she felt. Anger, resentment, love. All those feelings were mixed up inside her into a painful knot that was impossible to untangle. Simone came home from work and saw Talia sitting by the window, holding the sleeping Nova on her lap and looking at the city below. Millions of lights, thousands of windows, each with its own story. Somewhere people were arguing. Somewhere else, they were making up. Somewhere, they were falling in love. Somewhere, they were breaking up. Life goes on, no matter what. And it was both comforting and terrifying. Have you decided what you're going to do? Simone asked one evening, sitting down next to her on the sofa. I don't know, Talia answered honestly. I thought I knew. I thought it was all clear and simple, but the longer I'm here, the more I realize that I love him, despite everything. Love and respect are different things, Simone said quietly. You can love a person, but not respect their choices. I know, but can you live with someone you love but don't respect? Talia looked at her sister. Simone shrugged. I don't know, but I know for sure that you can't live in a constant lie. If he doesn't change, you'll be unhappy, and an unhappy mother can't raise a happy child. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after she left, the doorbell rang. Simone was at work. Talia was alone with Nova. She looked through the peephole and saw Ms. Caldwell. Her mother-in-law stood on the landing in an elegant coat, her back straight, but her face was strained. Talia hesitated for a few seconds, then opened the door. Hello, Talia. May I come in? Ms. Caldwell's voice was unusually soft, almost pleading. Come in. Talia stepped aside, letting her mother-in-law enter. They sat in the kitchen across from each other. Nova was playing in the room, and her quiet babbling drifted through the open door. Ms. Caldwell was silent for a long time, examining her hands folded on the table. Finally, she spoke. I came to ask you to go back to Devon. I won't interfere in your life anymore, I promise. Talia looked at her, trying to figure out if the words were sincere or another game. Why should I believe you? She asked directly. Her mother-in-law sighed, and there was so much exhaustion in the sound that Talia felt an involuntary pang of pity. because I saw what I turned my son's life into. He's not eating, not sleeping, walking around like a ghost. I wanted to do what was best. I wanted to feel needed, important, but instead, I destroyed his family. Miss Caldwell spoke quietly, without lifting her eyes. You wanted to be needed, so you pretended to be sick and drained money from us. Anger cut into Talia's voice. I didn't pretend, I just exaggerated. Yes, I have high blood pressure sometimes. Yes, my heart bothers me sometimes. But it's not fatal. And I blew it up into a crisis because that was the only way Devin would call me every day, come over and take care of me. Her mother-in-law finally raised her eyes, and they were filled with tears. I was lonely, Talia. So lonely that I was willing to do anything to feel needed. Talia was silent, processing what she heard. Sitting across from her wasn't an all-powerful manipulator, but a lonely, elderly woman who was afraid of being left with no one. I understand, but understanding doesn't mean forgiveness, Talia said slowly. You destroyed our trust. Because of you, we were on the brink of divorce. I know, and I'm ready to fix everything. I'll return the money, every single penny. Miss Caldwell took an envelope from her handbag and placed it on the table. Here's the first installment. Talia looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. It's not about the money. It's about the fact that I can't trust you or Devin. How can I go back to a home where I was deceived for months? You can't, and you shouldn't. Not until Devin proves he's changed. Miss Caldwell stood up. I'm not asking you to forgive me now. I'm asking you to give him a chance. He loves you, Talia. Truly loves you. Her mother-in-law left, leaving the envelope on the table. Talia sat for a long time, staring at the envelope, thinking that in life there are no simple solutions, no clear divisions between black and white. There are only shades of gray and the endless attempts to find the right path. The next day, Saturday, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Devin. He stood on the threshold with slumped shoulders, looking drawn and aged several years in just 1 week. He held a folder of documents in his hands. Can I come in? He asked quietly. Talia nodded and stepped aside. They walked into the kitchen and Devin placed the folder on the table. I canceled the sale of the apartment. Here's the letter to the realtor, and I annulled the power of attorney in Mom's name. Why did you do it? Talia looked at him, trying to understand. Because I finally understood what I was losing. I went to see someone, an old friend of my father's. He's wise. He's been through a lot. He told me things that hurt to hear, but that I needed to hear. Devin sat down across from her. He said I was acting not like a man, but like a frightened child, that I was hiding behind my mother instead of protecting my own family, that I was letting her manipulate me because I was afraid of disappointing her. And you agree with that? Talia asked quietly. Yes. He looked her in the eyes, and there was a sincerity in his gaze that couldn't be faked. I felt guilty toward my mother my whole life. She always talked about how hard it was to raise me alone, how she sacrificed everything, and I thought I owed her my entire life. But that's wrong. I owe my daughter, my wife, the family I created myself. Your mother was here yesterday, Talia said. She brought money. She said she won't interfere anymore. I know. We talked, seriously talked, for the first time in many years. I set boundaries. I told her I would help her, but only within reason, and only if she stops manipulating and pretending. Devin reached for her hand, but stopped halfway, not daring to touch her. Talia, I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I understand that trust doesn't come back with a snap of the fingers, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that I've changed. Talia was silent, looking at their hands, his extended but not touching hers, and hers resting on the table. There were a few inches between them, but those inches felt like an abyss. I'm scared, she finally whispered. Scared to go back and face lies again. Scared to believe and be disappointed again. I know, and I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. I'm ready to prove every single day that I'm worthy of your trust. Devin spoke quietly but firmly. Talia looked at him, the man she had loved for 5 years, the father of her child, the one who had caused her so much pain, but who now seemed to truly recognize his mistakes. She thought about how there are no perfect people, how everyone makes mistakes, and the question isn't whether you make a mistake, but whether you're ready to admit it and change. "All right," she said slowly. "I'll come back, but on certain conditions. Complete transparency of finances, a joint budget that we both have access to, no secrets, no hidden transfers, and boundaries with your mother, clear, hard boundaries." "I agree to any condition," Hope cut into Devin's voice. "And one more thing. If you lie to me again, even once, I'm leaving for good. No talking, no second chances." Talia looked him straight in the eyes. "Understood. I promise." Devin finally touched her hand, gently, as if it were something fragile. The next day, Sunday, they returned home. Simone helped pack their things, hugged Talia goodbye, and whispered in her ear, "If anything happens, I'm always here." The apartment greeted them with silence and dust on the shelves. Devin immediately started cleaning, vacuuming, mopping the floor. Talia unpacked the suitcases, putting things back in their places. Nova ran between the rooms, delighted to be home. Ordinary chores, but there was a new kind of caution in them, as if they were learning to live together again. That evening, they sat in the kitchen, the three of them, Devin, Talia, and Nova, in her high chair between them. They ate dinner in silence, each thinking their own thoughts. Then Devin pulled out his laptop and opened a spreadsheet. "Look, I put together the family budget. All our income and expenses are here. You have access too. Everything is transparent." He turned the screen toward her. Talia studied the figures and felt the ice of distrust slowly starting to melt inside her. It was the first step, small but important. Devin's phone rang. "Mom," lit up on the screen. He looked at Talia, and there was a question in his eyes. "You can answer?" Talia said quietly. "I don't mind." Devin picked up the phone but didn't put it to his ear. "I'll call you back later. It's more important for me to be here right now." He declined the call and placed the phone face down. Talia looked at him and understood that this was not the end of their story. There would be difficulties, doubts, maybe new conflicts ahead. Trust wouldn't return in a day. It would have to be rebuilt, brick by brick, patiently and carefully. But right now, at this moment, sitting together in the kitchen for dinner, she felt something close to hope. Outside, dusk was gathering. Lights were coming on in the neighboring buildings. The city lived its life. Millions of people were solving their problems and living through their dramas. And here, in this small apartment, a family was learning to be a family again, without illusions, without fairy tale promises, but with a willingness to work on their relationship every single day. Nova reached for her father, and Devin picked her up, holding her close. Talia looked at them and thought that love is not just a feeling, it is a choice that must be made every day. The choice to be present, to be honest, to be open, and they had made that choice. "I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.